2020 of March, we had over 8,000 people to receive services from our particular organization at Fraser House. 5,327 were jobs created with Amazon, U.S. Census Bureau, State Fair of Texas, and our organization, Zan Wesley Homes, because we did placements in low voltage. Our signature programs are as follows: Juneteenth Economic Forum, Lunch and Learn series, which we host on a monthly basis. Low voltage, which is light electrical training. It's a background friendly where we help people who were formerly incarcerated get into the workforce. And the cash flow, collateral, and leverage. That's the group that I teach personally with the Issachar and Asher tribes, where we work in teams to trade and just help them build their asset base. So today we have a special guest with us, Judith Collins, who's a great friend, not only to the center, but she's a great friend to me. And I want you to know what you're about to receive is needed. I'm gonna let Ms. Audrey go ahead and introduce our speaker for this morning.
Thank you so much. All right, I need everyone to help me welcome Miss Judith. A little information about her. She is a certified business advisor for the Dallas Metropolitan Small Business Development Center, and she helps entrepreneurs and small business owners in the Dallas County start and grow their businesses. She has helped start 531 businesses, created and retained 2,150 jobs, and generated almost $63 million in capital. She has been awarded the North Texas SBDC Network State Star Award for 2 years. Those years were 2014 and 2017. Judith has a BA degree in International Relations and Economics from Boston University and a master's in Public Affairs from the Lyndon B. Johnson School at the University of Texas at Arlington. So help me welcome Judith Collins.
Thank you, Audrey. And that's UT Austin. So I just want to make sure I say that because I'm sure there's some people in the audience that may want to connect with me on that level. But anyways, thank you again for inviting me to such an awesome event, the Juneteenth or Zan Wesley Homes Juneteenth event. And I'm always honored and feel privileged to be a speaker. So today, this morning, I'll be talking about how to innovate with market research. And it's critical, actually, in today's climate, that businesses really think about pivoting and understanding what's happening in the economy. We know there's a recession, for example. We know there's a pandemic that negatively or can negatively affect most businesses. So today it's about thinking how to maneuver around this new normal that we're experiencing. And so with that, I'm going to say goodbye and I'm going to share the screen, and all you see on the screen is my presentation. Okay, and I'll be back at the end. Okay, so as you know, my name is Judith Collins, Senior Advisor, Dallas Metropolitan SBDC, and we're talking about market research today, just to remind you all. Let me go to the next slide. Oops. Okay, so the objective of today are 4 things. We want to understand how market research helps us innovate. We want to understand what the process entails. And then we want to understand what it takes to identify your target market. We say that a lot, but it is some effort behind it. And then from that, we develop and devise our marketing strategy, which is a common objective we we want to attain today to pivot, as you know. Also, let me remind you that if you have any questions as we go along, feel free to put your comments in the comment box, and Audrey or Jasmine will be looking at your questions and making sure that we address them at the end. And also, at the end of the presentation is an activity that we might want to do together. So here we go. Let's start with a definition of innovate. So contrary to popular belief, innovate simply means make changes in something established, or especially by introducing new methods, ideas, or products. So it doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to be inventing a game-changing or disrupting technology in your business, nor does it mean that you're coming up with something completely unique. It just means that we got to change. We got to change things up to meet the new climate, the new normal, the new needs, the new demands of our client. Okay, for example, we saw many restaurants had to innovate, and how they did that was they established more takeout routines, right?
Right.
They had curbside pickup. We even saw some of them packaging their food as TV dinners to sell to their customers. Some packaged their foods and gave to charities so that they stay relevant in the headlines and not forgotten until they figure out what's next. But those are some examples of innovation. So let's look at what market research means, because we do say it a lot, but we're not sure what it entails. I highlighted up the word process because it is. It's a deliberative process and it takes time. So it doesn't take a few days. Most of the time it can take many weeks, even many months, but not to deter you. It's one of those important exercises that allow us to get to know ourselves and our business better so that we can sustain our business model and meet whatever challenges that comes to us head on versus being reactive. So this process entails gathering, analyzing, and interpreting data for the marketplace. Interpreting is just drawing some conclusion from your analysis about what to do. There's also understanding your product and service more deeply, like how does the consumers react to it, right? Not only our current consumers, but potential customers. How would our potential customers react to our product? What about the characteristics? What about the spending habits of our consumers? What about the location? Where do they live? Where do they mostly come from? What are their major needs in the marketplace? We're talking about our target market. These are customers that we recognize are really critical to whatever it is we're selling. That's our target market. Well, what about the industry that our target market is in? And what about the particular competitors that we're trying to face? Okay.
Just start over, Judith. Start over. Go back to what is market research.
Oh, was it too loud, the sound in the background?
Yes, it was. Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
Start over.
All right. So again, let's unpack the definition of market research. So I know that's what we get for Zooming at home. But anyways, yeah, so it's a process and it's a deliberative one. And so it takes, and so let's talk about the process. It requires gathering, it requires analyzing, and it requires interpreting information about the marketplace. Also, it requires you getting to know the product and service that you're delivering, you know, whether it's still relevant, for example, or do we have to change it up a bit? It's also talking about your product and service as it relates to your potential customers and What about the characteristics of your potential customers? What about the spending habits of these new customers? Where do they tend to live? Where do they tend to hang out? Their watering hole. What are their needs, and does the product or service meet those needs? These potential customers are your target market. And so as it relates to your target market, what is the industry telling you about them? And also, what about the competitors in that industry that's significant and related to your target market customers? And so, yeah, it's a lot, but we can break it down. And today's purpose is to just do that, is to give you some bite-sized understanding about the steps so that you can embrace maybe a few of it. Maybe not all of it, but at least get acquainted with it, the process. All right, so why are we talking about it and why do we do it? Well, to make it relevant today, it's because we're in a recession. It's a must today because it's a new normal out there and not too many people understand what it means. And so in a recession, what tends to happen are your consumers. They become challenged. They become challenged with buying your stuff. Because they're challenged with buying, they're looking for deals. Because they're looking for deals, they might be switching up different brands and different product categories. So what does that mean to you? Well, if you are right now in a business that sells expensive items, maybe expensive items that mostly is not a need. For example, maybe earrings, accessories, maybe even clothing items. Maybe you're a boutique. You're probably going to be feeling the pinch as consumers spend less and be more diligent about how they spend, meaning they may be budgeting more often. Some of consumers, I know I am, we're changing attitudes about consumption. I used to love to shop and eat out, but now most of the time I'm cooking thanks to sheltering in place. But also, because I'm not going out, I don't really need to buy anything new, no new clothing, for etc. So my spending budget on clothing and on excess, anything like makeup or even getting my nails done, that's gone. I mean, it's nowhere to be had. And also, it helps us to understand right now that there's a lot of uncertainty going on as a business. And that makes it really hard for us to predict what consumers are going to do because we're not sure. For example, even though businesses have reopened or we've opened up, the COVID-19 has spiked in terms of infection rates in our own marketplace. And so while we know that the governor is not going to close businesses down, it's going to be up to us, we certainly know that potentially customers, that's going to impact our customers. Maybe we're going to even have less customers, or maybe as the COVID-19 spikes, this is going to be it for us. There's going to be no more, or business is going to bottom out. And even though that sounds dark, it's still an opportunity to really think and reflect on what to do next. Here's some more whys in terms of why we do market research. Mostly to identify how customers and potential customers might view your business and identify gaps in customers' expectations. That's huge. It's powerful information to have when completing your marketing strategy. You know, sometimes we just dive into a marketing tactics thinking it's a marketing strategy, but it essentially isn't when you don't have market research behind it. And then having good market intelligence helps us to minimize risk when making key business decisions. For example, there are some businesses that debated whether they should take on that PPP loan or that idle loan, despite the fact that they're not bringing in any revenues, right? And they're not sure whether they'll be gonna be bringing in future revenues. Market research kind of helps us understand from a projection basis or financial projection basis, whether we have enough clients, whether we can pivot in a way to get new clients, to maintain our revenues so that we can maintain profit and so that we can pay down on a PPP loan or an idle loan. Okay, so let's talk about the tools that are necessary when we use market research. We're familiar with a few, like Facebook groups or any social media groups to that effect. In the old days, we used to use focus groups. We used to conduct live interviews, and we can do that now, but most of the time we use social media platforms to get that done. And surveys and questionnaires are still in fashion. Also, we do Google Analytics, industry reports, market data, demographic data, psychographic data. In the gray, we're talking about primary data. Primary means that we, us business owner or the staff that you delegate, can actually reach out and touch the marketplace, meaning they can pick up a phone call and survey their customers about what their needs are, whether they like the new menu item, whether they like the new product, etc. We call that primary research because we're doing the research and we're developing the questionnaire and we're doing the legwork. In the yellow, the Google Analytics, the industry reports, the market data, the demographic data, etc. We have to get those from secondary sources. For example, the census. But also we have to go on Google and use their tools to download some key things about our marketplace, like what is the most frequent search term that they use when it comes to buying jewelry, or when it comes to insurance, or when it comes to home health care. Those are some secondary sources. Also, when we're talking about trends, market trends, we can read books, or again, we can use social media to see what are some trends happening in the marketplace. Next is, if you're confused about where to start to begin to locate these tools, you can start with us. We're the Dallas Small Business Development Center. And if you come to us, we have some tools like Reference USA. Reference USA is a powerful tool in that if you want to understand who your competitors are, if you want to understand how much annual sales or revenues they generate every year so that you can compare yourself, if you want to understand your competitors all the way down on the block that you have your brick and mortar, then this becomes an essential tool to use. Demographics now, mostly about the customer makeup. In other words, if you want to know how many African Americans live in the southern sector, do you want to know of the African Americans, what age groups are there? So how young is the population, for example, to get a sense of whether they're baby boomers there or whether they're millennials, whether they're Generation X. Demographic Now is wonderful. Demographic Now also uses zip code research, or categories in terms of identifying the ethnic makeup, the education makeup, the race makeup, etc. by zip code. BizMiner is wonderful when you want to compare or benchmark your business sales activity against the industry. That comes in handy when we do projections. SizeUp is similar to Demographic Now in that it provides demographic information. For example, your education, the race, and so forth. And then IBIS World is an awesome tool in that it's strictly on the industry. So if you want to know, for example, home health care, what's trending in home health care, what are the key operations or costs associated with home health care, etc., IBISWorld becomes a wonderful, wonderful source. All of this at no cost, so you can check us out. Francis, do you want to say anything about tools?
No, but the only thing I need to ask so that the audience will know, how do we come in and access? So do we have to make an appointment, or, do we tell us the process?
Sure. So if you feel like you want to dive into market research for your business using our help, then the process is you pick up a phone and you make an appointment. Most of the time, I'm not going to be available, or the advisor's not going to be available right then and now. What we have to do is we have to fill out some intake forms first, and then we set an appointment to talk. And we can talk for as long as you want. A lot of clients tend to book me between 1.5 to 2 hours to discuss market research. And also, it doesn't have to be that one day. It could be a series of days during the week or during the month, whatever it takes. And I'm there to guide you through this process. Does that answer the question? Okay.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Thank you, Francis.
You're welcome.
Let's make this interactive and fun.
Okay.
Okay. So let's talk about the benefits of market research. And this time we're going to get into the target market, the industry, and so forth. Okay. So you hear me mention how it's really important it is to be customer sensitive. Sometimes when we're in a restaurant business, for example, or sometimes when we're in a boutique business, for example, we can get caught up in the things we're selling because we're very prideful about our food and we want to make sure everybody's happy, for example. And maybe we love a certain type of style. But what I want you to do is really focus on the customer and their reaction to the food, their reaction to the style. It's essential for you to have that connection to your customers, because the customers is going to ultimately inform you what to do next. It's going to ultimately inform you how to change things up. It's also going to inform you of these things before there's a drastic change in the marketplace, like a recession, and in this case, a pandemic. So it's helpful to be sticky or form a relationship with your customers that allows you to engage with them to get consistent feedback. So the definition of our target market is, a target market is the market a company wants to sell its products and services, and it includes a targeted set of customers who it directs its marketing efforts to. And what's nice about understanding how who your target market customers are is that it helps you streamline a market tactic. In other words, you're going to use the right colors, you're going to use the right messaging to appeal to that customer that you identify as your ideal target market. Contrary to popular belief, we can't please everyone, but we can certainly figure out of the everyone who is a targeted market bunch of customers who our product and service appeals to, and then learn how to cross over into other target markets as we grow. So use market research to gain a better perspective and understanding of your market of target audience, and then ensure that your firm gets ahead or stays ahead of the competition. Okay, so once you get a sense of your target market, in other words, let's say it's African Americans in the Southern sector, then what you want to do next is to kind of drill down into profiling subsets of African American in the Southern sector. For example, you want to understand the social behavior or social graphic of a particular type of African American. Understand the behaviors and whether a certain behavior really makes that thing that you're selling or the service all that more appealing. For example, you might want to decide to target African Americans that are busy, have busy lifestyles, right? And so if you're selling a food, you may want to see about healthy foods, which is growing to be a popular target market endeavor. The psychographic is understanding interest and hobbies of that individual. Does that busy individual, for example, do they have pets? Do they have kids? And in that case, you know, what can we do to also gain their trust and their business in other aspects of their lives? There's geographic. Maybe they're concentrated in a certain zip code or area of the southern sector, and therefore you may want to stick to that area. And then of course the demographics. We mentioned some demographics earlier. It's about the age, it's about spending power, so their income, it's about their race, it's about their sex, and so forth. That's kind of where we are when it comes to demographics. Anything you want to add here?
Yeah. Okay, so let me give everybody an example. Originally in our business model for Fraser House, our target market was single females and head of household and grandmothers. But once Fraser opened, we noticed we had to change the target market. So to more of a educated population, because when we started doing lunch and learns, as well as formerly, reincarcerated individuals who would come in and take advantage of our low voltage. So let the group know that sometimes you may start on a path, but your target market may change based on your product or services.
Right. Yeah, good to know. All right, so let me go to the next slide. And this slide is, you see some happy customers here. They have big smiles on their faces. Well, I'm sure they do because the business that is servicing them, I want to say that they're using the tactics that I suggested, which is how to get closer to them, how to understand who they are in terms of their demographic profile and psychographic profile, etc. But most importantly, they're tracking them in a database. So some of us have heard of the CRMs or customer relationship management databases. I know a lot of corporations, for example, really spends a lot of money here. And as a small business, I'm not suggesting that you go out and invest in Salesforce or any one of those. All I'm suggesting is use your Excel spreadsheet to come up with your own way of tracking the behavior, the changes, the attitudes, the frequency of how much of what your clients purchase, anything, so that you have that information to lend some insight into how to sell to them in the future, how to keep them loyal in case a competitor enters the market. That customer relationship database is key to success these days as market research. The two go in hand. To stay ahead, to make your business sustainable, you need to focus on your customers, their needs, but drill down into specific area of needs and wants. Market research allows you to keep a pulse on these changing needs and desires. There's lots of examples of this. For example, we have older mom and pops. So these are businesses that might have started in the 70s, and these are brick and mortar businesses, for example. And some of them are boutiques, some of them are restaurants, some of them are insurance agencies. So a lot of the times you see these businesses on Main Street and they're doing well because they've been around for years and they've established a successful, loyal customer base. But what happens when a new generation of customers start to frequent the downtown area? For example, millennials. Well, if you own an insurance office and that new millennial walks into your insurance office and you have paneling on the wall, you still have that old decrepit television, it's not a flat screen, you've got all sorts of plants streaming from here to there, the colors are not very bright and inviting, then just from your decor, you might end up turning away that new customer called the millennials, right? Or Gen X. The same thing with restaurant. The food might be good, but if for some reason it's still a smoky environment because you're not going to adhere to that, you think that most of your customers are smokers and therefore you're not going to change the rules up, or you use certain old-fashioned ways of conveying the items on your menu, things of that nature. You're not responding to the new customers, and so mom and pop at some point lose their customers, or they lose momentum because they're just not staying in touch with them in a way that brings information to them to react and change so that they maintain and sustain. If anyone has any questions about that, now is the time to put or make a comment in the comment box, but that's a very common thing. The CRM helps us to do that. It helps us to anticipate new needs. All right, so we talk a lot about customers, didn't we? But there are other aspects of market research, and that is the market itself, the marketplace. So one of the things that we want to understand is once we have a certain amount of customers, we also want to determine what is their spending power. So we might use a market assessment to determine that. So what we do is we count up all the potential customers that would be a good fit for the business. And then we multiply by the number or average revenues or their income to get a sense of the size of the market. For example, let's go back to African American in the Southern sector. If we find through our demographic information that there are, say, 28 or 30,000 African Americans that live in the Southern sector, the next question we might want to ask is, well, what kind of spending power do they have? And in that case, we might want to find out what is the average income and then multiply that by the number of customers to get a sense of the market size. Francis, do you want to make a comment here?
No. Go ahead.
Okay, so let's go on to trends. So in addition to our market size, we want to evaluate what's trending. And I know Francis got a lot to comment here. In fact, this is my favorite place to kind of discuss. Trends is one of those things that I like to read on my own. I tend to buy books called Megatrends, for example. And Megatrends just kind of tell us what's going on a global scale, on a relatively national scale, and on a local scale. What are trends, and therefore how that trends might impact our business, positive or negative, and therefore how we adjust. So one of the things Francis and I love right now is the spending power for African Americans. And the latest figure is that we're at $1.5 trillion in spending power, which make us rank 6 as a nation in terms of the sheer size of consumption that we provide in any economy. Francis, do you want to add anything else?
So given that information, going back to your market research, you have to now as a business be able to identify either demographically, by age, by socioeconomics, whatever, what is going to be that ideal customer based on the trend, be it positive or negative. And then also you need to know when the trend changes, you now have to shift, because also Judith discussed what is the biggest mistake sometimes businesses make. They take things for granted. They take trends for granted. And we'll just talk about the church for example. The trend is shifting. Don't you notice, from baby boomers being tithers to millennials being, action oriented. So discuss that a little bit in that sort of trend when we look at the church.
Yeah, so right now churches have been kind of quiet. I guess, and again, I guess the perfect term is take advantage of their customers, which for the most part has been baby boomers who values churches anyways and church going. But again, let's get to the millennials. I don't think they value churches as much, but they still have that value where they want to give back, but they would rather give to other types of nonprofits or whatever it is they feel that's in their heart that they want to give to.
Right.
And as a result of that, because church and how church teaching, because it hasn't changed to really resonate with the young generation or connect in terms of its messaging and its language to the younger generation, they tend to shun that. So just think that if we as a church embraced a more progressive but yet still truthful way of interpreting and communicating the message of the gospel or the Bible in a way that really makes young people sing, resonate, and feel joyous in the moment. That would be one example of how, as a church, we could change to open up and make more customers like millennials and younger millennials come into the church and be giving and tithing to us and the mission that as a church that we also aspire to. And that could very well be feeding the hungry or anything like that. Those things tend to resonate with young people. They just don't find it in the church. They find it elsewhere.
Yeah, they're cause driven, everyone. And so when you look at the millennial as a mega trend, their spending patterns or habits are based on causes.
Okay, that's wonderful. And again, to find out more about trends, my favorite thing again is to read lots of books on what's trending on mega trends of the, whatever century, whatever decade. But social media got lots of sources on trends, lots of online magazine talks about trend on a continuous basis. All right, my favorite part of market research is that it helps us see the future. So it helps us to forecast. And the reason why this part resonates with me is because business also, not only is it mostly about customers, but it's about our milestones, like our numbers. Like at the end of the day, a business has to generate sales. It has to understand cost. It has to make a profit. So a lot of us don't necessarily put our heads in our income statements or our balance sheets, but let's go back to just the income statement. It tells us how much sales we do on a daily, on a weekly, on a monthly basis, and how much sales impact our cost on a monthly basis. And also, as a result of that, how much profits we're gonna make. And so when you do market research and something like a pandemic or recession or something jarring happens, we know that it's going to impact sales negatively because our sales are going down. But that's not a reason to give up on forecasting what could sales be 2 or 3 months from now. In fact, that becomes ultimately more important if you want to sustain as a business. And so forecasting is something that I would love to help you with as an advisor. It's one of the challenges and struggles that most small businesses tend to have when they run a business, because sometimes it's really expensive to pay for that consultant or that super CPA. But what we like to do, and I like to do, is just to teach you first by understanding what your numbers are, and understanding how trends and things like recessions impact those numbers, and then plan for the best, how to pivot and therefore survive a year from now or at the end of the year. Those are some things that market research will help us do. All right. Another one of my favorite things about market research is competition analysis. So again, when we do business or start or have a business, sometimes we're only concerned with the competitor that's on our block. For example, if you're a restaurant, most of the time restaurants tend to do successful because there are other restaurants around. Because most people or customers like to go to a restaurant in a destination type of area. So restaurants, we tend to focus just on our neighbor, and that's good, but there are other restaurants too that we might have to keep an eye on. And what I like to tell my clients is there are direct competitors and there are indirect competitors. So if you have a burger joint and you sell burgers, that's a direct competitor. But if you have a burger joint and you're right next door to a seafood restaurant, then while it's a competitor, it's more indirect. Sometimes we get kind of crazy and we treat our competitors like enemy, but I don't recommend that at all. Sometimes it's good to treat them as allies, especially the ones that might not be directly competing with you. Another tip about competitors and analyzing your competitors is I like to, again, go to my Excel worksheet and identify 5 to 6 direct competitors and then 3 to 5 indirect competitors, compare myself to those competitors, and then through that process, I come up with my unique selling proposition, meaning I figured out a way that to stand out away from my competitors. When you do that comparison, you want to do things objectively and think about things to compare, like marketing tactics. You want to compare prices. You want to compare the environment. You also want to compare the locations. You want to also compare your service methods. And when you do that, you get to understand truly what makes you unique, and therefore also what makes customers come to you. And then you use customer feedback mechanism to confirm what you're learning. Anyways, let's go to the next slide. The SWOT. Everybody knows this one. But what's cool about doing a SWOT is that you get the opportunity to kind of plug it into any framework. For example, we were just talking about competitors. Let me drink some water. Let's talk about first what SWOT is, so that we're on the same page. I know everyone talks about it, but I'm not sure everyone does it. But SWOT just means strength. The W is weakness, and O is opportunities and threats. So both your primary research, your fieldwork, and your secondary research, which is what I call the desk research, can be utilized as an insurance policy against dangers and opportunities on the road ahead, as well as identify your strengths and your weaknesses. I like to use SWOT to identify my own personal strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats as an owner. Or if you're partners, do it together. Because sometimes we too have to change our mindset to make changes that are permanent and lasting in our business. So if we're stuck in a rut or stuck in a certain value system or stuck in a certain way of being, then sometimes we're not capable of making changes that we might be learning about our market research data. So a SWOT allows you to personally understand who you are as well, not just the other business, but who you are and make the changes necessary for you to become a change agent or be open to change. All right, benchmarking. So a Price Waterhouse survey found that companies that benchmark achieve 69% faster growth and 45% greater productivity than those that don't. So you can use market research to highlight performance or knowledge gaps. So again, you might have noticed that from a sales perspective, and mostly benchmarking occurs in the financial space. That's what I like to do it. And the financial markers of business, as you know, once again, is your revenues, your expenses, your profit. So benchmarking could mean you benchmark yourself. In other words, a year ago in 2019, in the month of March, your sales were at a certain level. And in 2020, March, your sales is 70% less. When you recognize those numbers, 70%, it makes you act instead of, say, react. Some of us just react because we know customers are no longer coming. Some of us are reacting because the government is coming into our world and they're closing our doors and they shouldn't be doing that, la, 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 la. But the truth is, when you see recessions or things that are happening out of your control, it's best to just get a grip and go back to your business numbers to get some kind of foundation and quietness to do what's next. We know that a pandemic that has highly contagious virus ultimately is going to close businesses for health reasons. So sometimes it's best to be proactive about just closing it, understanding what are the sacrifices you have to make at that point, and then proactively figure out what's next. So we're down 70%. What I'll do is look at what's trending in the industry as far as the economy and sales overall in business. And if the news is telling me that by the end of the year, 25% of sales should get back online, then I'm going to use that as a benchmark to help me project what that looks like in sales, how that impacts expenses, and therefore what to do next. Do you want to comment here, Ms. Francis?
No, that's great.
You know,
that is a great analysis.
Okay, wonderful. So next, finally, it minimizes investment risk. Sometimes when we react like a fire, in this case, the fire is the pandemic or recession, we just start pouring water on it. We just want to see it out. In business, you can't afford to be, again, reactive when you have limited resources. And so if you, for example, most businesses don't have more than 3 months worth of reserve in case something catastrophic happens in the world that they live in. It doesn't have to be a pandemic. It doesn't have to be a recession. It could be a tornado. You know, it could be any bad weather situation or inclement weather situation. Or it could be, God forbid, a death in the family, a death with a partner. It could be anything that is out of your control that disrupts your business. So again, you don't want to throw dollars at it. You don't want to necessarily go hire someone right away if you lost, for example, a partner. You just want to calm down a little bit and think about what was that person's role? What was it that they were responsible for? What are the skills that was required to make that happen? Can you take on the skills, or should you hire temporarily someone to do the skills, etc.? If it's inclement weather, it's about insurance. Do you have insurance for the type of damage, and so forth. But at any rate, what I'm trying to say is market research, understanding what could happen before it happens, allows us to spend money better. We're more diligent about it. Because most of us have limited funds, doing market research first before we launch your business is worth the effort. With little investment, we can research and test the marketplace, the product, concept, or idea before committing 100% of our funds. So I also want to tell you all that if you're going to start a business, because interestingly enough, it's a good time to start a business, believe it or not. If you do, market research should tell you that customers take some time to come. So you don't want to invest every savings you have into opening up that drive-through daiquiri shop, for example. You want to test the marketplace first before you buy the building, for example, or invest in all sorts of flavors of daiquiris. You may want to start slow, etc. Anything you want to add here, Francis?
Yeah, let me add this. Yesterday, I told the class that an action item was for them to develop a risk management plan. And in the risk management plan, they needed to determine everything that would disrupt the business. So here we come full circle to what you're saying today, because having that risk management plan allows you to maneuver and navigate through the ebbs and flow of your business.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, finally, market research helps us to develop a strategic plan. So we need data. Let me just read. Market research is the foundation of a good business strategy. The best business strategies are based on evidence of market conditions, sourced on studies or your own unbiased observation of the data that you compile. Okay? So again, some of us, when we think strategic plan, or when we go to a bank, we figured, well, we want to start a business, so we want to go to a bank, and the bank says, well, you need a business plan. Or we have a business, changes are happening, and we thought, well, maybe just go outsource and buy a strategic plan so I can take it to the bank and get some money. What I would encourage you to do is kind of stop in that moment, because that's a good moment when you realize that you need other eyes to kind of guide you in a decision that you're about to make. Well, in that case, it's a market research decision. We know that it's a process. Why don't you stop by at an SBDC and just kind of think through it a bit? And by the end, we can make a decision whether we want to invest in outsourcing a market study or not. Most of the time, again, in the age of social media, most of the time, market research is right at our fingertips. We can do that survey if we only maybe get some help or get some feedback. We can figure out what's trending, and we can figure out what benchmarks we have to set at the end of the day, so that that helps us meet our goal in terms of sales, expenses, and profit. So in other words, there is a lot in your control today than it was in the past. So I would advise you to take advantage of that, your mind first. And if you don't trust your mind, maybe you're emotional. If you don't trust your mind, then I agree. A third-party neutral is the right thing to do. Take it to a third-party neutral person. That could be Francis, San Wesley Helms. It could be me at SBDC. It could be your best friend who owns a business. or not, or work in a corporation, whatever, just recognize that this process takes some proactive measures to be good and relevant for the situation that your business is in. Okay, last, tell your story. So once you do your target market search and understand who it is and where it's gonna be, and then you figure out what size it is and therefore the market opportunities that exist. And then you want to understand who the competitors are, right? And also understand setting some financial benchmarks in terms of where you want to be a year from now, or even 6 months or a year from now. You've got your money. Then if you look at this slide, right in the middle is how you would tell your story in a way that makes sense or turn into a plan. In this case, it's a business plan that ultimately would lead to a marketing plan. So in the middle, you start with your mission statement. The situation analysis is the situation now. We're in a recession, we're in a pandemic, sales are 70% down, customers are leaving, things are trending, there are certain industries that are bustling still. What can we do? Look at your internal factors. What are strengths and weaknesses? Do you need to hire another person? Do you need to buy some technology or software to help you become better, efficient at doing tasks and jobs? Look at external factors. Again, opportunities and threats. These are things out of your control. How could you mitigate things that are out of your control? Again, the pandemic and the recession. Also, once you answer those questions, you come to some kind of strategy or some tactics, mostly steps that you need to take. And then you develop your marketing strategy. You know that your marketing strategy is gonna be around your target market. So African American in the Southern sector, whatever you're selling, maybe it's some earrings or some food. It's a haircut, it's a salon, it's a home health business. Then make sure that you're checking in on price. Say you're targeting the middle class, that price needs to be at a middle class price. Contrary to popular belief, you don't want to go in with the lowest price. That can eat up your inventory, for example, if you're selling something and now you don't have capital to buy more. You can evaluate the product. You can also think about the promotion. What marketing vehicle are you going to use? Are you going to use social media? Are you going to use a magazine? Are you going to use television, radio, all the above? Well, you have a budget, so I'm not sure if you can do all the above most of the time. So you have to be selective in what you're going to use at this moment in time for the next year, for example. Place. Where is the place that we're going to send our ads, promote our ads? If it's a certain zip code, for example, is what that's leading to. And then I have an arrow that talks about the second graphic there. And the second graphic is really going deep into the marketing strategy. And by that, you're looking at the objectives of what that marketing strategy could accomplish. Do you want to increase awareness? Do you want to make an impact? Do you want to build a community? Do you want to nurture or become advocate or other advocates? I recommend in the first year that you don't necessarily want to do all four. You may want to start with one and have that build up onto the other one. For example, you may want to start with just increasing awareness. And through your awareness, you gain some insight from market research surveys that says, hey, I would love it if your company donates more to causes. And so maybe you want to change towards making an impact with causes, because when you surveyed, you ended up understanding that the millennials were the ones that was servicing the company, and therefore when they say make changes or make impact, it makes sense, right? And then if you feel like you want to do other things, you just keep building from there based on the feedback of your customers. Okay.
Let me just add something. Let me add, Judith.
Sure.
Yesterday, we talked about the 3 things you're going to need for entrepreneurship in this new innovation economy. 1 was problem solving, critical thinking. 2 was entrepreneurship, and 3 was creative storytelling. And what Judith is bringing out today, everyone, is how you're going to formulate your creative storytelling. So she shows us here in this example on what we need in order to create a marketing planning process so we can actually begin that creative storytelling. Thank you.
Yes. I couldn't have said any better. Thank you, Francis. Okay, so we're at the end of my presentation, and Francis was saying that, you know, we need an activity to ensure that this education really sticks. So I came up with an activity, and there's an activity sheet that comes with my class. So if you haven't downloaded it, the scenario or situation reads like this. And then there's some questions, and then there's some comments at the end that you might use or ask yourself to make it relevant to your business situation, so that you can, you know, basically so you can essentially engage in that market research process on your own and pivot or pause in a way to take your business to the next level. So here's the scenario, and I'm sure it's familiar. Here we go. Sales for your business was on the increase in January and February of 2020 until the pandemic. The coronavirus pandemic wasn't just wreaking havoc in China and other countries, it made its way to the United States at breakneck speed. The virus, COVID-19, began to take many lives. While you saw it coming, you decided to hold on and pray that things would remain normal and business would continue as usual. But alas, the virus began to overwhelm hospitals and the medical system. It even disrupted supply chain networks, and before you know it, the governor of your state declared that all non-essential business must close their doors for a few months to help manage the spread of the virus. Your business had to close because you are not a non-essential. You're not an essential. So business sales fell 70% in March compared to a year ago at this time. So that's your benchmarking. You only have a month of cash reserve left before you're considered laying off your payroll. That's another benchmarking. Luckily, Congress passed a law to inject cash into the contracting economy in the form of a low interest loan. The stimulus would allow you to borrow 2.5 months of cash to help cushion the lack of revenues. You use the cash to maintain your employees and pay key expenses. And so it goes on to say, what should you do next? And we're suggesting take the time to do some market research, to figure out how to innovate permanently, innovate in a way that's going to take you through the end of the year and into the following year so that you sustain your business. And that is my lesson in a nutshell. But if you look at that activity sheet, it'll ask you similar questions that we learned here, like explain what your business is and does, and start with your mission and your purpose. It's funny, sometimes we just dive into marketing, we have to market strong. But I always say, no, go back to where you started. Go back to your heart. Go back to why you did the business in the first place. What problem were you trying to solve? Because if the answer is, oh, I solved the problem, or the problem no longer exists, then that will be your essential step into the right market research. In other words, that's the direction you're going to take. Maybe I need to find another problem to solve. Here is how I'm going to approach my market research. And that's it. Thank you. That's it. Any questions?
Wow, awesome, Judith. Thanks. Let's connect the dots, everybody. Okay, yesterday we dealt with 3 things you need in this innovation economy. 1 was critical thinking, 2 was entrepreneurship, and 3 was creative storytelling. So those are the 3 major topics. Also, we dealt with mega trends. And I said to you yesterday, market research is going to be important. Now you should understand why you need market research, because there are several components that Judith broke down today on market research, so we can tie this together so you can be more successful and sustainable for your business models. Audrey, I'm going to let you go in and begin to deal with the questions. Please place them in the chat. Judith, we appreciate you tying it together. Remember, guys, you can go to the SBCD and retrieve the free tools. You don't have to pay for anything. Even with your CRMs, you could use an Excel spreadsheet to begin doing it. Let's take some little steps now in order to move your businesses to the next level. Audrey.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
First one, we just, Lewis. Hey, Lewis. He had a couple of books he wanted to recommend. The 22 Immutable Laws of Branding was the first one. They're all in the chat. And the Contagious, Why Things Catch On. So thank you for those recommendations, Lewis. First question is from Connie. She wanted to see the SWOT slide again. Either she didn't catch everything or she needed to write something down.
Okay.
Or you could also take a picture as well.
Okay, I can
put the slide back up.
Oh, so you want me to put it up?
Yes, please.
Okay.
And while you're pulling that up, I'm in the chat. The next question.
Just got bounced back out.
Okay. No problem.
I think it's the host again. Share screen.
All right.
Okay. And while we're getting that slide up for you, Connie, the next question is from Tommy. He wants to know where the SBDC is located.
Okay, the SBDC, right now we're all sheltered in place. So we're all at our homes. But the SBDC is at Bill J. Priest, and the address is 1402 Corinne Street, 75215. So right now we're shelter in place. So I will leave my phone number so that you can give me a call and I can help you with any questions that you may have. There's the slide.
Great. Okay. Do we have any other questions?
All right, well, awesome. Thank you, guys. We had 30 participants on today, Judith. We want to thank you for such valuable information. I'm going to let Jasmine close us out. Ms. Jazz, go ahead.
So again, we want to thank you, Judith, for bringing us this valuable information, as well as we want to thank everyone that has joined us today. We truly appreciate it, and we can't wait to see what you all do with this information. So please make sure you let us know your results and what you did actually implement, as well as let us know which one of you all do decide to actually reach out to Ms. Collins. We would like to make sure that we keep up with that data. Aside from there, I'm going to also put our text to give number inside the chat box. So again, if you're able to, we definitely appreciate it. And then coming up for the second session will be on real estate. So as you've heard Francis, as well as you've even heard Judith say, asset building is kind of everything right now. It's to stay sustainable and to be able to weather the storm of this recession, on whether or not you're going to be on the bad side of it or the good side of it. So I think it'll be extremely important if you attend the next class, and that will be at 1 o'clock. And again, like I said, that's going to be on real estate. So it doesn't get too much better of an asset class than that. And then later in the week, we're going to go over taxes, as well as we're going to go over entity building. So a lot of people, they may be working, they have a company, or they're doing something, but it's not a legit company. Or let's say that you're still operating inside of it, sole proprietor. It is time for you to go ahead and upgrade to an LLC, or to maybe even an S Corp, which could also help you on your taxes. So I definitely encourage people to attend that. And then we also have, from our staff, both myself and Audrey, I'll be going over social media marketing. So you'll hear a lot of the tidbits that Judith was discussing when it comes to market research. I will be elaborating on some of that, as well as adding some different things. And then you're going to have Audrey, who's going to go over the how to do sales, which is extremely important. I always like to tell this story, and I know I need to hurry up and stop talking, but I love this story. So someone asked me once, who do I think came first, Lyft or Uber? And I was like, Uber, because everyone says like, I'm going to Uber. And they were like, no, Lyft initially came out with the idea. Uber took the idea and did a better job of marketing. So it's not that a market is too saturated. It's just that you have to do a better job at making yourself look different and step out. And you can have the same exact product. You just have to learn how to market it and sell it better than someone else. So Audrey is going to tell us and teach us kind of how we can do that. So that way we can take those businesses to the next level. And aside from there, again, we would love for you to attend these sessions. If you attend at least 8, you do get the opportunity to win a free tablet courtesy of Francis and her company. And again, like I said, make sure that you keep the same names. So that's how we're tracking who is attending the classes. And you do have to actually attend the class. So you can't come in halfway through and say, I was here. So, but make sure you keep your names the same. If there is an extenuating circumstance, so let's say one day you're going to dial in by phone because you're on the road, and the next day you're going to be on your computer, just make sure you let me know that information, and I'll make a note of it. So that way we can make sure that you are included and counted, because we want to give everyone an opportunity that does participate. I think that may be everything. If you need any information, email me. My email, I'll put that inside the chat as well. So if you need a link to any of the other classes, you can always go on our website and you can look at the registrations, and then you can register for any of the upcoming sessions, or just press all. If you press the all, then I'm going to put you on the list for the duration of the classes that we have coming up.
Okay, I have a couple of questions that popped up as you were speaking, Jasmine.
Okay.
Judith,
Yeah.
They're requesting your phone number.
Okay. Let me put that in the chat, but it's 214-293-1539. That's actually my cell number.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next thing is they want to know if you would do a Zoom interview. That question was asked.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, if you send me a Zoom link, I'll be there for you. I'm there for you.
And they're asking for email.
Oh, email? Okay. So my work email is jcollins, COLLINS, at dccd.edu. So that's dCCCD.edu. I was curious about a question. Don't be sad or shy about thinking that market research is hard. In fact, I wanted to ask that question at get-go. It's not an easy process if you don't do it a lot. I tend to do it a lot. I've been doing it as a research scholar, actually, when I was doing my master's. It's just a mindset that I have. And I recognize that it takes us a time to develop that. So I'm very understanding of that, and I'm going to be patient with you as a result of the fact that it's so process intensive. But yeah, don't be afraid to kind of comment, this is hard, I don't even know where to start, you know? So those are some things, those are some questions that I'm ready to, you know, to answer and to tackle for you.
Okay, and the final question, I think it came through twice. Slide number 18.
Slide number 18, okay.
Slide 18 was requested a couple of times.
Slide 18. Benchmarking.
Is that it? You guys, any other questions? Let's check. Louis, you good? Gotcha. I believe.
I don't mind. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mind sharing the slides with your participants. I can certainly send them over if
Send them over to us and then we will distribute it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks again for the
that's all
opportunity.
questions. Thank you, Judith.
Sure. Is this where we say
Jasmine?
goodbye? Parting is
All
such
right.
sorrow.
Well, that's everything. So again, thank you all. I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and we hope to see the rest of you all back here at 1 o'clock.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.